The other day, I visited a primary school on the outskirts of Seoul that looked, from the outside, like a gleaming monument to the future. The hallways were silent, polished to a mirror shine, and equipped with the kind of high-tech AI learning pods that would make a Silicon Valley executive jealous. I met the principal, a man who spoke with practiced bureaucratic pride about their world-class curriculum and the unparalleled discipline of his students. He showed me a trophy case overflowing with math Olympiad medals as if they were spoils of war. "We produce the best," he said, his voice echoing in the empty corridor. But then we reached the first grade wing. He opened the door to a classroom designed for 30 students, but inside there were only 4 children. They sat huddled at the front, looking tiny against a backdrop of 26 empty, ghost-like desks. The elite education he had been praising suddenly felt less like a ladder to success and more like a beautifully maintained museum for a disappearing species. When I asked him where the rest were, he didn't point to a map or set a temporary move. He simply looked at the floor. It's a chilling contrast. While leaders meet at the Nara summit to discuss economic security and chip supply chains, with the cold language of geopolitics, the actual foundation of their civilization, the next generation, is evaporating. We have spent decades perfecting an education hell designed to filter out the weak, and it has worked so efficiently that it is now filtering out life itself. This isn't just a demographic accident or a low birth rate. When the number of entrants drops below the 300,000 threshold, you aren't looking at a crisis, you're looking at a rational collective strike. The question is, if the ladder of success has become a money-shredding machine that demands your entire future as a down payment, why would anyone choose to step onto the first rung?
That image, that's incredibly powerful. 4 kids in a room built for 30. It really just lands with this physical weight.
It does.
Because we get so lost in the numbers, don't we? We hear low birth rate and our eyes just glaze over. It's a line on a graph.
It's an abstraction.
Exactly. But what you saw, that's not a gentle slope on a graph, that's a cliff. Or maybe more like a crater. It's the physical proof of a system that has basically decided the future is too expensive.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We're trying to move past those abstractions and understand the why, because the Ministry of Education just confirmed the numbers for the 2026 academic year, and we've officially crossed a line.
A historic one. For the first time, the number of first-grade entrants in South Korea has officially fallen below 300,000.
The specific number is 298,178.
Which just sounds so precise and bureaucratic for something so catastrophic.
So let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. Why is 300,000 the magic number? Is it just a psychological barrier, or does something actually break when we dip below it?
It's both. I think it's absolutely both. Psychologically, it's the floor giving way. But you have to understand the speed of this thing.
Right.
In 1999, that number was over 700,000.
Wow.
Even in 2008, it was over 500,000. So to drop below 300,000, you're talking about a 60% reduction in a single generation.
60%.
But the mechanical part, that's where things really start to fall apart. The entire country's infrastructure, I'm talking universities, the military conscription system, the pension funds, all of it was built assuming a pipeline of at least, say, 500,000 new people every year.
A constant supply of new workers and soldiers.
A constant supply. And when you drop below 300,000, the machine doesn't just, slow down. It starts to seize up. The gears start to break.
So we're running a society with an operating system designed for a population that just doesn't exist anymore.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that gets to this idea you mentioned in your notes, that this isn't some passive accident. You call it a civilizational strike.
We have to, because a strike implies a choice. It implies agency.
It's a conscious decision to withhold something. In this case, not labor, but life. Reproduction.
People are looking at the terms and conditions of the social contract, they're reading the fine print, and they are actively choosing not to sign.
They're saying the working conditions for life itself are unacceptable.
Let's get into that fine print then, starting with what might be the biggest clause in that contract. This idea of the education myth, and what our sources are calling the screening funnel.
This is central to the whole story. For decades, the deal was simple.
Right. Suffer through school, cram like your life depends on it, and you get a golden ticket to a stable middle-class life.
That was the promise that built modern Korea.
But the price of that ticket has gone through the roof, and the prize at the end. It's not what it used to be.
Not even close.
There's a story from our research that just nails this. It starts with a teacher in a quiet district in Seoul who posted a photo online of a completely empty school hallway.
Not because of a holiday.
No. because her first grade enrollment had officially hit 0. But the story's really about a father. Let's call him Ji-hoon. And Ji-hoon is a guy who did everything right. He played the game. He spent his entire youth in hagwons.
And maybe we should define hagwon for anyone not familiar. It's not just tutoring.
No, it's not. Think of it as a parallel private school system that starts after regular school ends. Kids go from school to a math hagwon, then maybe an English one, and they're often there until 10 or 11 at night.
It's an industrial-scale cramming apparatus, the shadow education system.
Exactly. So Ji-hoon survived that shadow. He got the decent office job, he checked the boxes, but now he has a daughter, and he realizes he's about to put her on the exact same conveyor belt of misery.
He sees the cycle starting again.
He sees it. He's looking at the tuition for a prestigious English kindergarten.
Which is now, what, table stakes? It's just the basic requirement to even get into a good elementary school.
It's the new baseline. And he compares that cost to his salary, which hasn't really grown in a decade. And he has this moment of clarity. He realizes that to give his daughter this purely theoretical chance at success, he has to sacrifice everything. His money, his time, his sanity, and crucially, her happiness.
And so what does he do?
He and his wife make a decision. A quiet one, but a firm one. They decide they will be the last of their line. They stop.
Wow.
He calls it a reproductive strike. It wasn't a tragedy to him. It was a protest.
That is such a fundamental reversal of the parental mindset. You know, we're used to hearing, I will suffer so that my child can have a better life.
Of course.
Ji-hoon's logic is, I will prevent a child from existing so that they don't have to suffer. It's like a form of preemptive mercy.
It totally reframes the debate around people not having kids being selfish. From his perspective, it's the most selfless thing he can do.
And if you look at the economics, he's being brutally rational, this money shredding machine, as you called it. Let's put some numbers on that. Over 71% of high school students in South Korea are in private tutoring. It's not an optional extra anymore. It's a defensive cost. You pay it just to keep your kid from falling behind.
A defensive cost. I like that.
And for many middle-class families, those costs can eat up over 20% of their entire household income.
20%. That's a second mortgage. That's your entire retirement fund. Just gone.
Gone. And what are you buying for that 20%? You're buying your child entry into this screening funnel. This is a really key concept. Education used to be seen as a pump, you know, it pumped talent up. Now it's a filter. It's designed to disqualify as many people as possible.
Because the competition for the very top, the SKY universities, Seoul National, Korea, Yonsei, it's a zero-sum game.
Absolutely. So parents are pouring a fifth of their income into a system that is statistically almost guaranteed to tell their child they've failed.
So a drop of 100,000 students in just 3 years, there's basically tens of thousands of Ji-hoons all doing that same grim calculation.
And all arriving at the same conclusion. The ROI is negative. It's an economic boycott of a system that no longer delivers on its promise.
And the physical result is what I saw. It's empty hallways. It's nearly 4,000 schools across the country facing closure.
And it's a recruitment cliff for teachers. The government has slashed teacher recruitment by 27% this year alone. Why hire teachers when you have no students to teach? The machine is literally running out of fuel.
And it's fascinating you mentioned the state's role, because that's a perfect pivot to our second major point. This incredible chasm between the reality of Ji-hoon at his kitchen table and the priorities of the government.
The macro-microchasm, the gap between the fortress and the person living inside it.
And right now, that gap it's a canyon.
It really is.
I want to share another scene from our sources. It's from a video of a young salaryman in Tokyo. Let's call him Sato. He's in his apartment, and I use that term loosely. It's basically a 4-square-meter closet, and he's eating a meal from a convenience store.
A classic image of urban solitude.
Totally. And on his phone, he's watching a live stream of the NORA summit.
That's the big trilateral security meeting, right? South Korea, Japan, the U.S.
The very same. So on his little screen, you have world leaders talking in this grand abstract language. President Liu Jing is talking about macro sovereignty. They're talking chip supply chains, AI security, defensive modernization.
The great game of geopolitics.
The great game. They're talking about the nation as this fortress that has to be defended at all costs. But Sato looks up from his phone at his tiny room, at his sad meal, and he has this profound realization. That fortress has nothing to do with me.
I'm not being protected by it.
I'm being consumed by it. To the state, he's just a unit of labor, a cog. But to him, the state is this distant, demanding entity that asks for his total exhaustion in exchange for what? Perpetual insecurity.
That's the concept right there. Micro-level survival alienation. It's this deep feeling that the nation's success is completely decoupled from your own. The country's GDP could double, we could dominate the global chip market, and Sato's life won't get better.
In fact, it might get worse. The pressure to work harder would just increase.
Precisely. And this disconnect, it's what gives rise to this language you see everywhere now, like the term hell Josian.
We hear that a lot. Can we unpack it? Because it's not just a complaint that life is hard, is it?
No, it's much more specific and damning. It's a direct reference to the Joseon dynasty, which was a deeply rigid feudal society with a strict caste system.
So by using that term, young people aren't just saying things are bad.
They're saying we've gone backwards. They're saying we're living in a new kind of feudalism where your birth and your parents' wealth determine your destiny, not your hard work. The promise of meritocracy is dead.
And that feeling of hopelessness, that's what creates the Nipo generation.
Right. Nipo, the give-up generation.
It started with giving up just a few things, didn't it?
Yeah, it began as Sampo, giving up 3 things: dating, marriage, and childbirth. Then it escalated to Oppo, giving up 5, adding home ownership and personal friendships.
And now it's Nipo.
Now it's Nipo, where N is a variable. You just give up an N number of things. You keep shedding aspirations until there's nothing left but basic survival. It's a philosophy of strategic resignation.
And it's driven by the physical reality of the city. The housing data from Seoul is, it's mind-boggling. Yeah. Over 13 million won per square meter. But the number that really got me was the average commute time.
Oh, this one is a killer.
Under 1 minute.
101 minutes, average. So many people are commuting for much longer.
Just think about that. That's nearly 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
You lose an entire workday every single week just sitting on a crowded train or stuck in traffic.
And let's do the math on that day. You work a 10-hour day, which is common. You commute for 2, that's 12 hours gone. You try to sleep for 7, that's 19 hours. You have 5 hours left in your day.
To do everything. Eat, shower, clean, shop, decompress, maybe see a friend.
Where in that brutal schedule is there time or energy to build a relationship, to raise a child who needs constant attention?
It's not there. It's a structural impossibility.
And yet, what has been the government's solution to this deep structural problem?
Throw money at it.
Throw an unbelievable amount of money at it. The sources say something like 360 trillion won has been spent on birth incentives since 2006.
360 trillion? That's an almost incomprehensible number. Why is it having zero effect?
Because it's a fundamental misdiagnosis of the problem. They're treating a structural crisis as if it's a simple financial transaction. They're following a policy of select and concentrate. Meaning they think, if we just give Sato a one-time cash bonus for having a baby, he'll magically forget that he lives in a closet, commutes 2 hours a day, and sees no future for himself. It's almost insulting.
It ignores the lived reality.
Yeah.
Sato doesn't need a bonus. He needs a life.
He needs a society that's actually designed for human beings to live in, not just to work in.
So we have this massive disconnect. The macro state is worried about chips and tanks, while the micro individual is collapsing under the weight of rent and exhaustion. But this leads to a third and maybe the most explosive layer of this whole situation.
The one that's a bit of a minefield to talk about.
The gender conflict.
Yeah. You really cannot have an honest conversation about the demographic collapse in East Asia in 2026 without confronting the sheer level of hostility between young men and women.
It's not just a drifting apart. It's like an active repulsion.
It's become a zero-sum game. And again, this isn't because people are just inherently angry or difficult. At its root, this is an economic conflict over a shrinking pie.
Our research turned up an essay by a young woman in Seoul. Let's call her Min-hee. And she's part of the 4B movement.
Okay, let's define 4B because it's a very specific and radical ideology.
It is. It stands for 4 Korean words that start with B. Bihan no marriage, Paihilsa no childbirth, Baine no dating, and the last one, bisexu no sex.
It's a complete and total withdrawal from the heterosexual world.
Total. And Minnie's explanation for why she joined is fascinating. She says it has nothing to do with hating men. She calls it resource management.
Resource management.
Yeah. She says she grew up in this hyper-meritocratic world where every grade, every internship was a brutal fight. She clawed her way to a precarious sense of stability.
And she sees marriage as a threat to that stability.
A huge threat. She's looking at the data on the motherhood penalty. She sees that women still do the vast majority of domestic labor. She sees the gender wage gap, which is the worst in the developed world. Women in Korea earn about 29% less than men.
So from her perspective, getting married and having a child is committing professional suicide.
Exactly.
Yep.
She's not willing to sacrifice the scarce resources, her career, her autonomy that she fought so hard to win. She actually uses this phrase. She calls it a state of civilization-level sterilization.
That phrase is just, it's chilling, but it captures the severity of it.
It does. But we have to be clear, this didn't just appear out of nowhere. There's a whole backstory of online warfare that radicalized both sides.
This is the Ilby versus Magalia story, and I think for a lot of people outside of Korea, this context is completely missing, but it's essential to understanding the present.
Let's walk through it. Where does it start?
You can trace the roots back to the 1997 Asian financial crisis. That was the economic trauma that shattered the promise of lifetime employment, the salaryman ideal.
So young men suddenly felt very insecure about their future.
Deeply insecure. The job market shrank, competition intensified, and in that climate of fear and resentment, a website called Ilby flourished. It was this far-right, anonymous forum that became an echo chamber for intense misogyny.
They felt like they were losing their footing in society, so they lashed out at women.
Pretty much. They felt a sense of reverse discrimination. For example, when the courts ruled that giving extra points on job applications for mandatory military service was unconstitutional, they saw it as women getting an unfair advantage.
So they created this narrative.
A really toxic one. They coined terms like kimchi-nyo or kimchi woman. The stereotype was that all Korean women were materialistic gold diggers just looking to leech off a man's hard-earned money.
Which is, of course, a vile caricature.
Horrible. But then came the counter-reaction. A feminist community called Magalia was formed, and they decided on a very particular strategy. They called it mirroring.
Mirroring?
They decided to take the exact same hateful language and logic that the men on Ilby were using against women and just flip it, mirror it back at them.
So if Ilby users called women insects,
Magalia created the term hanamcheong, which means Korean man insect. If men complained about gold diggers, they'd mock men for being insecure about their small salaries. The stated goal was to make men see how ugly their own rhetoric was.
it was a fight fire with fire approach.
It was, but what happens when you fight fire with fire?
You burn the whole house down.
You get a scorched earth. Instead of promoting understanding, it just hardened the battle lines.
Oh.
It created two entrenched, mutually hostile camps.
And now you have what some sociologists are calling a biological deadlock.
A deadlock. Young men feel the system is rigged against them and that women are unfairly demanding. Young women feel the system is hopelessly patriarchal and that men are the enemy.
And because the economy is so tight, not enough good jobs, not enough affordable housing, it becomes a zero-sum game. Any perceived gain for one gender is seen as a direct loss for the other.
And that's the tragedy. The intense struggle for social survival, to pass the exams, to get the job, to afford the apartment, has completely cannibalized the biological imperative to reproduce.
When just surviving day-to-day takes 110% of your energy, having a family isn't just a challenge, it's a liability, a risk you can't afford.
Right. So where does this all lead? We have the education hell creating empty classrooms. We have the macro-micro chasm creating lonely apartments. And we have economic scarcity fueling a gender war. It really does look like a society that's efficiently engineering its own disappearance. Is that the end of the story?
Or is there another way to frame it? This brings us to the final part of our deep dive. What does the future look like? Is it just collapse or something else?
Well, there's an emerging school of thought that's trying to reframe this using terms like degrowth or, my personal favorite, elegant stagnation.
Elegant stagnation. That sounds deceptively pleasant. Like a beautifully maintained Zen garden that's just, not growing anymore.
That's the exact image they want to evoke. And the core question is this: is this demographic collapse necessarily a catastrophe? Or could it be interpreted as a choice?
A choice for what?
A choice to prioritize social order and cultural cohesion over the chaos of perpetual growth. The argument goes that societies like Japan and South Korea might be subconsciously choosing to become smaller, quieter, cleaner, and more homogenous.
Even if the long-term price is fading away.
Exactly. They'd rather have a meticulously managed decline than deal with the social friction of mass immigration or the upheaval of radical economic change.
Okay, I hear the argument. I understand the aesthetic appeal of elegant stagnation. But I have to push back on that word, elegant.
Go for it.
Because the economic reality on the ground doesn't look elegant at all. It looks brutal. We're hurtling towards a super-aged society. Projections show that by 2050, there will only be 1.4 workers supporting every one retiree.
The dependency ratio is completely inverted.
It's inverted. The national pension system is forecast to be insolvent by 2044. And right now, today, South Korea has the highest rate of elderly poverty in the entire OECD, over 43%.
That's not elegant.
No. That's elderly people collecting cardboard in the streets to buy food. There's nothing elegant about that.
You're absolutely right to puncture that fantasy. Elegant stagnation is a concept that's most appealing to those who are already wealthy enough to insulate themselves from its consequences. For everyone else, degrowth looks a lot like a collapse in public services and social safety nets.
And it has a hard geopolitical edge to it as well, which brings us back to that NARA summit.
Yes, the security dimension is unavoidable.
You have the U.S., Japan, and South Korea trying to form a united front to deter North Korea and China. Deterrence requires a credible military. A military requires soldiers.
And it requires a massive tax base to pay for all the high-tech equipment, the AI, the missiles, everything they were discussing at the summit.
And the U.S., especially with the ongoing pressure from a potential second Trump administration, is demanding that allies spend up to 5% of GDP on defense.
5%.
How on earth do you fund a military expansion of that scale when your tax base, the number of young working people, is shrinking by the day?
You can't. It's a mathematical impossibility. You cannot have elegant stagnation at home and be a military superpower abroad. The two are mutually exclusive. It's like the state is trying to run a marathon while its own legs are dissolving.
Which brings us full circle, back to that number, the fall below 300,000. It really does feel like the final, definitive signal that the old social contract has been torn up.
It's the end of an era, the era of developmental liberalism, that post-war idea that we all sacrifice together for the good of the nation and we'll all rise together.
What has replaced it?
Survivalist individualism. It's no longer we're all in this together. It's I need to secure my own lifeboat because the ship is going down.
And in a world of survivalist individualism, the only real power, the only leverage an ordinary person has left
is the power to say no. The power of non-work production. It's the ultimate protest. If the state will not guarantee my future, then I will not guarantee the state's future. It's the final and most rational strike.
So today, we've walked through those empty school hallways of the education hell. We've sat in Sato's lonely Tokyo apartment, feeling the disconnects from the macro state, and we've waded into the digital trenches of the gender wars.
And the common thread, the thing that ties all of it together, is rationality. I think that is the single most important takeaway.
That this isn't an emotional breakdown.
No, it's not madness. It's not a generation being lazy or selfish. It is a series of calculated, rational responses to a system that is offering a terrible deal. People are looking at the price of entry, the cost, the stress, the sacrifice, and comparing it to the reward, and they are, quite logically, walking away from the table.
It forces you to ask a really fundamental question about what civilizational success even means. For half a century, the goal was efficiency. Efficient schools to produce efficient workers for efficient factories to create an efficient economy.
We optimized everything. We built a perfect system for filtering and sorting human beings.
But life isn't efficient.
No, biology isn't efficient. Raising a child is the most beautifully inefficient process imaginable. It's messy and chaotic and expensive and completely unpredictable. By creating a society that systematically filters out messiness and weakness and inefficiency, we have, without meaning to, filtered out the very conditions necessary for life itself to continue.
We built a machine that's so perfectly optimized for competition
that it no longer has any room for actual human beings inside it.
A perfect machine running in an empty room.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.